Today's video is made possible by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform to create your own professional website or portfolio quickly and easily. For a free trial and 10% discount, go to squarespace.com/TomRich and use the coupon code RICH. How's it going, everyone? This is Tom. Two of the biggest and best-selling Android phones this year are likely to be the HTC One M8 and the Samsung Galaxy S5. I thought it would make an interesting couple of videos to compare each against each other, so this is actually 10 reasons the HTC One M8 beats the Galaxy S5. Number one, let's start with the most obvious one here, and that's actually the build quality. The HTC One M8 has a 90% aluminium construction compared to an almost all plastic construction found on the Galaxy S5. I think the vast majority of people, if they've ever used an aluminium-based smartphone for an extended period of time, would agree that there's almost no way plastic construction could compare to a solid metal one. The HTC One M8 isn't just better built than the S5, it's one of the best built phones ever. Rounded aluminium edges, gorgeous brushed aluminium finish, there's just no way Samsung can answer back in this category. For number two, let's talk about the speakers on the HTC One M8. HTC Boom sound has been around since the last generation HTC One M7, and it's only got better on the M8. When you compare this to Samsung's tinny singular speaker on the back of the phone, it's just unbelievable to hear the contrast. I'm going to play you a segment from one of my videos on both phones and let you judge the difference. Number one is the phone's build quality. Now let's get this straight quickly. This phone isn't badly built, it just uses materials which tend to be associated with cheaper devices. The fake chrome bezels and overall plastic construction just feel a lot cheaper to hold and to use compared to devices like the HTC One M8. Number one is the phone's build quality. Now let's get this straight quickly. This phone isn't badly built, it just uses materials which tend to be associated with cheaper devices. The fake chrome bezels and overall plastic construction just feel a lot cheaper to hold and to use compared to devices like the HTC One M8. Third, HTC Sense 6 versus TouchWiz. Most of these phones rock skins on top of Android, and TouchWiz has always been famous for being a bit in your face. The case is no different here in 2014. HTC Sense 6 is without doubt the best version of HTC Sense yet. It's been thinned back, flattened out, and feels closer and closer to stock Android. It's still there, but it's quick, responsive, and overall enjoyable to use. This is actually hugely beneficial, and if you compare them side by side, the HTC One M8's version of Sense 6 over the top of Android is a lot more similar in the experience you get on a Nexus device. And this means generally it presents a better user experience, and if you've ever experienced a stock Android device on a Nexus phone, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. HTC Sense isn't stock Android, but it's a hell of a lot closer than TouchWiz on the Galaxy S5. Fourth, again, we're talking about software, but this time it's software speed. TouchWiz has improved a lot as well over its last iteration, but it still quite consistently has this rather annoying lag in usage. HTC Sense has either been so untouched compared to stock Android, or just has better software optimization for the hardware that the One has, that you rarely encounter any lag whatsoever. After swapping out the HTC keyboard for the stock Google keyboard available within the Play Store, I can count the number of times I've encountered visible lag on this phone on one hand. On the S5, however, you get large instances of situations like this, touch response being slow, the screen not responding to your touch occasionally, and just generally laggy user interface elements. 5. Knocks and gestures. This is actually one of my favourite features about the HTC One M8. Other people will definitely enjoy using it, but I feel like I like it so much just because it's stupidly, geekily gimmicky. Whilst the display of the phone is locked, you can tap the display twice in portrait orientation to wake the phone. Swiping up with the display in portrait orientation locked will actually unlock the display without having to press the sleep wake button, and swiping to the left or the right, I always forget, will bring up HTC blink feed. These may not sound super useful, but because of the placement of the HTC One M8 sleep wake button, I found myself using them absolutely all the time, and of course there's no such feature like this on the Samsung Galaxy S5. 6. Battery life. Now I know there's going to be people who are going to argue with me on this one because it is somewhat subjective. The Galaxy S5 has a 2800 mAh battery, and that has the advantage of being user replaceable, but the HTC One M8 has a 2600 mAh battery that is non-user replaceable. However, in my experience of using these two phones equally for around 2 weeks straight, I've experienced much better battery life on the HTC One M8 as opposed to the Samsung Galaxy S5. I tend to rock power saving mode on the M8 by default, which may have quite a lot to do with it, I'm not 100% sure, but that's credit to how unobtrusive the power saving mode on the M8 actually is. It doesn't kill cellular activity, things of that nature. It just makes your phone slightly more battery efficient by adjusting brightness and things like that. I've quite regularly been able to squeeze 2 days of usage on one charge with the M8, which is more than I have been able to with the Samsung Galaxy S5. The S5 battery life isn't bad, don't get me wrong, far from it in fact. It's just not as good as the M8 in my experience. 7. Onto weight. The HTC One weighs 160 grams, whilst the Samsung Galaxy S5, obviously with its battery in, weighs a total of 145 grams. This 15 gram difference may not sound like a lot, but it definitely does contribute to making the phone feel more premium. Personally, I enjoy a heavier phone as opposed to a lighter one, obviously within reason. It also just contributes to making you more aware of the phone. The Samsung Galaxy S5 personally feels too light for its size, which adds to the device feeling less premium. It's less imposing in your pocket and less imposing whilst you're actually holding the phone. And again, you may think that's a good thing, but personally, I enjoy being able to kind of use something a bit more tangible and substantial to use on a day-to-day basis. 8. Ports. Just a quick one here, but probably one of my biggest gripes with the Samsung Galaxy S5 is the stupid flap that covers the micro USB port. In order to seal the phone off from water, this flap needs to be closed, and every time you charge the phone, you need to open it. You get this ridiculous notification every single time you take the phone off charge, reminding you to close the cover. It's just not a good experience at all. I've never dropped my phone in water, so would much rather have a flush, well-designed charger and port access like the HTC One M8 has, and just remember not to drop my phone in a swimming pool anytime soon. 9. Front-facing camera. The front-facing camera is actually surprisingly good on the One M8. It packs 5 megapixels, which gives it a decent amount of detail, and is super wide angle. The Galaxy S5 has a closer focal range, and it's still decent, but less detail is retained. And personally, I just feel like it's slightly worse overall. The colours are slightly more washed out, the contrast is lower, and it's a more exhilarating selfie experience on the HTC One M8 than it is on the Samsung Galaxy S5. Finally, number 10. We are all aware of the bloatware that Samsung is only too fond of throwing into all of their phones. Now, this is definitely the most opinion-based number on the list. Personally, I like to use my phone as a phone. I'm a pretty standard smartphone user in the fact that I like to use simple functions to do with my phone, such as emails and tweeting. I have a set amount of apps, a selection of apps that I use frequently. For me, this means the HTC One M8 is a much more streamlined experience because it lacks the large amount of Samsung bloatware that Samsungs tend to stick on top of Android that you can't really get rid of. Things like S-Voice when you hold down the home button to access, which I've never used once. Smart Scroll, Air View, Air Browse, they're all things that are there on the Samsung Galaxy S5, but I just never have got used to using, and I never plan on using. I hate to say it, but it tends to be because they're more annoying than functional. This may not be a negative for some people if you enjoy that kind of software, but for me it's a hell of a lot easier not to have them at all than have them and not use them. HTC has packed almost none of these gimmicky features into the One M8. That's it guys, 10 reasons the HTC One is better than the Samsung Galaxy S5. Drop a like if you're excited to see 10 reasons the S5 beats the One M8. I'd also really appreciate a like if you have made it to this point in the video and have enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more videos just like this one, and I'll catch you next time.